The sun was low when the wagon rolled in, wheels shrieking against the ruts, a sound like bones grinding in dry wind. The trader yanked the reins, and the horses stopped before the saloon where the whole town had gathered to stare. 17, he barked. Strong, quiet, don't talk back. Worth more than any horse you'll find west of the Platte. The girl stood barefoot beside the wagon, her hands bound with a length of frayed rope. Her dress, pale, dusted gray, clung to her shoulders as the wind pulled at it. No one moved. No one spoke. From the far end of the street, Eli Marrow stepped forward. He was twice her age, tall and gaunt, hat low over his eyes. His spurs didn't sing when he walked. They whispered like they didn't want to wake something sleeping. How much? His voice came dry like with smoke. The trader spat into the dirt. 200. She's worth every cent. Eli looked at her once, long enough for the townsfolk to hold their breath. The girl didn't meet his eyes. Her lips trembled, not from fear but something colder. He tossed a leather pouch. Coins clattered. The trader counted, nodded once, and cut the rope. The girl rubbed her wrists, red marks bleeding through the dust. The trader climbed back on his wagon and rode off without looking back. The echo of hooves faded into the empty plain. No one spoke. No one dared. Eli turned. Come on. She followed, silent, past the gawking faces, past women whispering behind their shawls and men spitting tobacco to hide their unease. The air was thick with judgment and something darker, curiosity. At the hitching post, Eli lifted her up onto the saddle. His hand brushed hers, rough as bark, and she flinched. He said nothing, mounted his own horse. The two rode out as the last light bled over the rooftops. The trail to Marrow Ranch was 20 miles of nothing. The sky was copper and bruised. The earth cracked from thirst. Dust rose behind them like ghosts. Neither spoke for hours. The girl kept her hands tight on the saddle horn, eyes fixed ahead. When she finally spoke, it was a whisper. You buy me for work? Eli's eyes stayed on the horizon. Bought you to keep you alive. She frowned. Alive for what? He didn't answer. A hawk circled overhead, crying into the dying light. The sound carried long after it was gone. By the time they reached the ranch, night had swallowed the plains. The house stood alone, 2 stories of timber blackened by weather, windows glowing faintly with lamplight. Fences stretched like ribs across the land. Somewhere in the dark, a horse neighed low, uneasy. Eli dismounted, handed her a lantern. There's food inside. You sleep in the back room. Don't wander past the corral after dark. She nodded. The moment she stepped through the doorway, the floor creaked like it remembered someone else's weight. The room smelled of dust, iron, and something faintly floral, a ghost of perfume from a woman long gone. She found bread and beans on the table, ate in silence while Eli sat opposite, oil lamp between them. You got a name? He asked. Clara. He nodded once. Eyes shadowed. I had a wife once. She was named for a flower too. Clara looked up, but he didn't continue. The wind moaned through the cracks in the boards, and a lantern flame leaned toward it like it wanted to escape. Later that night, she lay awake on the cot, watching moonlight crawl across the ceiling. Somewhere outside, a gate clanged. Then, a low, hollow thud from a barn. She rose quietly, feet bare on the wood, pulled the shawl tight around her shoulders, and stepped outside. The cold bit her skin. The ranch lay silent under a silver sky. Wind hissed through the grass like whispers. She followed the sound toward the corral, the lantern in her hand trembling. The barn door stood half open. Inside, horses shifted nervously, eyes wide with reflected light. Something scraped against the floor, slow, deliberate. Mr. Marrow? No answer. She pushed the door wider, and there he was, Eli, standing before a locked stall, hands gripping the bars. Inside hung a rifle on the wall, polished and oiled, beside a faded blue uniform jacket with brass buttons. Clara froze. He turned slowly. The lamplight caught the scar that ran from his cheek to his jaw. His expression was calm, but his eyes were caught between guilt and memory. Don't come in here at night, he said softly. Ain't safe for either of us. What's in there? Just old ghosts. The horses stamped nervously. He took the lantern from her hand and lowered it. "Get some sleep." She hesitated, then stepped back, watching him lock the stall again. The sound of the metal bolt sliding home echoed like the end of a prayer. Days passed. The ranch breathed again, slow, uneasy. Clara worked from dawn till dusk, feeding animals, scrubbing floors, stitching torn saddles. Eli spoke little, ate less, and watched the horizon like he was waiting for something to return. In town, the whispers spread faster than wildfire. Some said he'd bought her for sin. Others said for salvation. None of them knew which one scared them more. One evening, she stood at the porch as the sun bled into the desert, humming softly. The tune was haunting, a lullaby not meant for comfort. Eli stepped outside, wiping his hands on a rag. "That song," he murmured. "Where'd you learn it?" "My father used to sing it," she said. "Back east, before the soldiers came." His shoulders stiffened. The rag fell from his hand. "What soldiers?" She looked up at him then, eyes steady and old beyond her years. "The ones who wore gray." For a moment, nothing moved, not even the wind. Then he turned and walked back inside without a word. That night, the bell from the old church in town rang once, though no service had been called. The sound drifted across the plains and reached the ranch like a warning. Clara stood by the window, watching Eli through the glass as he sat alone in the barn, lantern light flickering across his scar. In her reflection, the flame in her eyes was the same. Rain hammered the tin roof hard enough to shake dust from the rafters. The horses were restless, kicking against their stalls, eyes rolling white in the lantern glow. Clara gripped the latch with both hands, the storm shoving wind into her face. "Easy," she whispered. "Ain't nothing out there but sky." The animals didn't believe her. They shuddered and whinnied, nostrils flaring toward the dark fields beyond the open door. Eli came up behind her, coat dripping, his rifle slung low across his arm. Lightning split the sky and threw his shadow across the wall. "You leave that barn open again, they'll break through the fence," he said. Clara didn't flinch. "It was open when I came out." His jaw set. "Then we got a visitor." He stepped into the storm, boots sinking in mud, scanning the fence line. The thunder swallowed his footsteps. Clara waited, lantern raised, her breath fogging in the cold air. When he came back, his face was hard as the rain-soaked earth. "Tracks by the stream. Small feet. Light." She swallowed. "A child?" "No child walks this far in a storm." He bolted the barn, led her inside. The fire in the hearth hissed from the damp. He poured whiskey into a tin cup and stared into the flames. "You see anyone near the ranch lately?" he asked. "No." "Liar." Her head jerked up. "I ain't. I saw smoke North Ridge yesterday. Someone's camped close." He took a long drink, eyes not leaving her. "You know him?" Clara's hands tightened around her shawl. "I don't." The silence between them was thick enough to choke on. Only the wind spoke, moaning through the cracks like a warning neither of them wanted to hear. Morning came clear but uneasy. The storm had washed the land raw, gullies filled with brown water, fences splintered. Clara worked alone, mending a gate while Eli rode out to check the herd. Each hammer strike echoed across the empty field. When she looked up, the sun glared off something half buried in the mud, a brass button dulled by time. She brushed it clean. An eagle insignia. Union Army. Her heart stuttered. From the ridge, Eli's horse appeared, trotting back slow. He dismounted without a word, face pale beneath his hat. "Found 3 steers dead near the arroyo," he muttered. "Shot clean through the head." "Bandits?" He shook his head. "Soldiers don't miss shots like that." Clara hid the button in her palm, closed her fist tight. "You think they're after you?" "I know they are." That night, she caught him cleaning his rifle again. The same one from the locked stall, gleaming, oiled, cared for like a relic. She watched from the doorway. "That the gun you used in the war?" He looked up. "Don't speak of that." "I heard stories," she said softly. "Men said you were the devil's marksman, the kind that shot before lightning hit." He didn't deny it, just kept polishing the barrel, slow and even. "Why'd you fight?" she pressed. He set the rifle down and met her eyes. "Because I didn't know better." Clara stepped closer, the firelight painting her face in gold and shadow. "You ever think of the ones you shot?" Every night. The room felt smaller then, the air tight, heavy with ghosts. She turned away, voice quiet but sharp. My father sang that song you heard once. The one you asked about. Eli froze. Her fingers brushed the scarred table. He died in a fire started by soldiers wearing gray. He stood slowly, as if the floor itself had turned to glass. Clara, you bought me, she whispered, but you don't even know who you bought. The lamp flickered out. For a moment, the dark swallowed them both. Days passed under a silence that could break a man's mind. Eli worked longer, rode farther. Clara spoke to no one, though sometimes she'd hum that same song in the barn, soft, defiant, like she wanted him to hear. Then the stranger came. It was midday when the sound of hooves cut through the quiet. Clara saw him first. A rider cresting the ridge, coat torn but clean enough to show the Union blue beneath the dust. He carried himself with the calm of a man used to command. Eli stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. The rider stopped 10 yards away. You Eli Marrow? Depends who's asking. The man dismounted, unbuttoned his coat. Name's Captain Judson. You remember that name? Eli's knuckles whitened on the rifle. Can't say I do. Judson's eyes shifted to Clara, who stood in the doorway. His face softened. Ma'am, you're Clara Wren, ain't you? Her breath caught. Eli turned toward her slowly, confusion and dread warring in his eyes. Judson nodded. Your father was a good man. Spy for the Union. Died brave. Been looking for you near 2 years. Eli lowered the gun an inch. She told you that. Judson's gaze hardened. Didn't have to. Your name's on the report, the one that listed the civilians killed under your command. Clara's knees gave out before she could stop them. The sound of the words was heavier than the thunder had been. Judson stepped forward. You think changing your name, buying a girl you orphaned, makes you right with God? Eli didn't answer. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Clara rose, eyes wet but not from tears. You knew, she whispered. Eli's voice cracked low. I didn't know it was you. Not then. She stepped back. You did. Judson turned to her gently. You don't have to stay here. Come with me. We'll see you home. Clara stared past him toward the endless line of desert. I ain't got a home. Wind stirred the dust around their boots. Eli finally lowered the rifle to the porch rail. You best ride out, Captain. This land's cursed enough without more ghosts stepping on it. Judson's jaw tightened. I'll be back, Marrow, with a warrant. He mounted and rode off, his horse's hooves echoing against the hardpan like slow gunfire. When the sound faded, Clara looked at Eli one last time. You bought me to keep me alive, she said. But maybe you just didn't want to die alone. She walked inside, shutting the door behind her. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and gunpowder. Somewhere, far off, thunder rolled again. And over the barren fields of Marrow Ranch, the whispers began, stories carried by wind and fear, that a ghost in Union blue had returned, and that the past was riding straight for them. The wind howled like it had claws. Dust rose from the earth in spirals, clawing at the porch rails, whipping grit into Clara's eyes as she held the door against the storm. Eli shoved his shoulder to it, forcing it shut. The latch clicked, but the sound was swallowed by thunder. Get away from the windows, he said. Clara didn't move. He's coming back. Eli's hands trembled as he slid the rifle's bolt home. I know. The lamplight flickered, dimming with every gust. Outside, lightning clawed the sky open, showing the shape of the land, ridges trembling in the distance, the barn door slamming loose against its hinges. Captain Judson won't come in peace, Clara said. He's a soldier. You left him ghosts to bury. Eli turned to her, face gray as the wind. You think I don't know that? Clara stepped closer, voice cutting through the thunder. You knew who I was when you bought me, didn't you? He met her eyes. Not then. Not till I heard you sing. Lightning flashed again, revealing her face, pale, fierce, unblinking. And you still kept me here. I owed you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You owed me a grave. The window shattered behind them, glass raining across the floor. A single shot cracked through the roar of wind. Eli lunged, pulling her down as a bullet buried itself in the wall where her head had been. Judson, he hissed. Clara scrambled to her feet, heart pounding like hooves on hardpan. He said he'd bring a warrant. Warrants don't shoot through windows. Another flash lit the plains. 3 riders cutting through the dust, faces wrapped, rifles gleaming wet in the lightning. Not soldiers, Eli muttered. Scavengers. They followed him here. The horses screamed in the corral. Clara grabbed the shotgun by the door, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. Stay low, Eli ordered. I'm not hiding. Before he could answer, the door burst open. Wind and dust surged in, carrying the first man through it, face masked, knife glinting. Eli swung the rifle, but into his jaw. The man went down hard. Another figure lunged from the side. Clara fired. The blast echoed through the cabin, smoke curling in the dim light. The man fell backward, his coat catching fire from the lantern he knocked over. The floor burned fast, grease, wood, and fury. Out the back, Eli barked. They stumbled into the storm, smoke clawing after them. The barn loomed like a black ship in the haze. The horses inside screamed, slamming their stalls. Cut them loose, Eli yelled. Clara ran for the gate, fumbling with the latch as her dress whipped around her legs. Another gunshot cracked behind her. Eli fired once, twice, then silence. Eli, no answer. She turned and froze. Captain Judson stood a few paces away, revolver steady in his hand. The storm had plastered his coat to his chest, but the Union badge still gleamed through the grit. Step away from him, Clara, he shouted over the wind. Eli was kneeling, one hand pressed to his side, blood dark against the rain. Judson's eyes burned cold. You don't owe that man mercy. You owe your father justice. The horses broke free behind her, thundering into the night. Lightning strobed across the sky, revealing her face, wet, shaking, but calm. She lifted the shotgun. He told me the truth. Judson stepped closer. He murdered your kin, and you murdered mine, she said. He froze, confusion flashing through his eyes. My father wasn't just a spy, Clara continued. He was a courier for men who sold secrets for gold. You used him, then you burned our home to hide the trail. The thunder swallowed his gasp. Eli forced himself to stand, voice low and rough. That true, Captain. Judson raised the gun toward him. You don't get to talk about truth. You killed civilians. And you killed for coin. The storm swallowed them in another burst of wind. Clara's hair whipped across her face as she took a step forward. You're both liars, but only one of you saved me. Judson's jaw clenched. He bought you. And you sold me, she spat. Same thing to men like you. The lightning struck the barn, tearing it open in flame. The roar drowned everything. Fire, wind, the crack of thunder that followed like the sound of judgment itself. Eli reached for her. Clara, get back. A gunshot split the air. Judson fell. Smoke curled from the barrel of her shotgun, her hands shaking now, breath breaking against the roar of rain. She dropped the weapon and fell beside Eli. You're bleeding bad. He smiled weakly, blood at the corner of his mouth. Ain't the first time. Don't talk like that. He looked past her at the burning barn. You've got to leave. There's more out there. Men will come when they smell smoke and death. She pressed her hands to his wound. Not without you. His eyes softened. You already paid your debt, girl. Don't carry mine, too. The wind tore through again, scattering ash and sparks. He reached up, fingers brushing her cheek. I thought buying you would fix something inside me. Guess I was wrong. She caught his hand, holding it tight. You gave me a name when I didn't have one. Then make it mean something. His breath hitched, slow, fading. Run. Lightning flashed once more, and for a heartbeat she saw his face, peaceful, unafraid, like he'd finally laid down a burden he'd carried too long. She stood. The fire was spreading fast, embers rolling through the grass like living things. The storm raged overhead, rain hissing against the flames. Clara picked up his rifle. From the ridge, another figure appeared. One of the scavengers, rifle raised, aiming down at her through the smoke. She didn't hesitate. The crack of Eli's rifle split the storm, clean and sharp. The man dropped. The rifle's echo rolled across the plains, fading into the wind. When the storm finally broke, the ranch was half ash, half mud. Clara stood alone in the rain, Eli's body at her feet, the rifle clutched to her chest. The thunder eased, the wind fell quiet. She turned toward the open land, the world beyond the fences, and walked into it. Behind her, Marrow Ranch burned until nothing was left but light. The shovel struck stone. Sparks leapt into the cold dawn. Clara leaned on the handle, breath shallow, hair clinging wet to her face. The storm had passed, but the world still smelled of smoke and rain. She drove the blade down again. Dirt thudded against Eli's coat, heavy, final. Each motion slower than the last. The wind crept through the ruined fence line, tugging at the edges of the burned house behind her. The ranch was gone. Only charred beams stood like ribs around an open grave. When she finished, she sank to her knees. The rifle lay across the mound, its barrel gleaming faintly in the new sun. She whispered something too soft for the wind to steal, then stood and turned her back on the past. The horizon waited, wide, endless gold. By noon, she reached the main road. The trail into town shimmered under the heat. Her boots were caked with mud and ash, the hem of her dress torn. Every step felt like walking through memory. When the saloon came into view, the porch went quiet. Cards froze mid-deal, glasses half-raised. The girl they'd watched leave with Eli Marrow weeks ago was back, alone, carrying his rifle. She pushed through the door. The hinges groaned. "Whiskey," she said. Her voice was steady. The barkeep stared, eyes flicking to the weapon slung across her back. "You legal to drink, miss?" "Wasn't legal to be sold either," she replied. He poured without another word. The liquid burned her throat, sharp and alive. From a corner table, a man rose. Gray beard, deputy's badge dulled by dust. "You Clara Wren?" She turned, slow. "Used to be." He nodded toward the rifle. "That's Eli Marrow's gun." "It was." "You kill him?" "No," she said. "He just ran out of things to fight for." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone spat. Someone else whispered widow's curse. Clara finished her drink and set the glass down. Storm took the ranch. Ain't nothing left for the law to collect. The deputy studied her face, then stepped aside. "You planning to leave?" She nodded. "I reckon there's work east, maybe south. Folks still need fences mended, cattle moved, wrongs made right." He looked at her for a long time. "Ain't much east but ghosts." She met his gaze. "Then I'll start there." She walked out into the light. Weeks passed. In towns strung across the desert like beads on a dying string, people started talking. They said a woman rode alone, wearing a gray duster and carrying a long rifle with a silver nameplate. They said she never stayed long, never asked for pay, just showed up when trouble found the helpless, then vanished before dawn. Some called her the widow's gun. Others said she was Eli Marrow's ghost in disguise. No one agreed on her face. One night, months later, a group of ranchers sat around a fire near Deadwater Creek. The sky above them was bruised and starlit. Coyotes yipped in the distance. An old man with a broken hat brim leaned forward, voice gravel and smoke. "You boys ever hear about the girl they sold to a lonesome cowboy?" The others chuckled, shaking their heads. "Go on then, tell it." He spat into the fire, the flames hissing. "They said she was 17, fought like a mule. Folks figured she'd vanish into dust, but she didn't. Storm came, burned the whole world she knew. And out of that smoke, she walked out clean, no man's property, no man's pity. Just her, a rifle, and the ghost of what she used to be." The fire popped. The listeners leaned in. "They say now, when the wind cuts hard through the canyon, you can hear her boots in the dust. That song she used to hum carries right with it. Means justice is close. And if you've done wrong." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "You best hope she don't find you first." The youngest rancher laughed nervously. "You believe all that?" The old man looked up, eyes glinting in the glow. "Belief don't matter. Stories keep the guilty awake." A gust swept through camp, scattering the flames. When the light steadied again, something shimmered at the edge of the dark. A figure on horseback, cloak snapping in the wind, watching from the ridge. No one spoke. The shape lingered a heartbeat longer, then turned and vanished into the night. The old man smiled faintly. "See? Told you. She don't haunt the dead. She hunts the living." Far from there, Under a bleeding sunset, Clara rode alone. The land stretched endless and unforgiving, but her heart was quiet now. She carried no map, no name. Only the rifle, Eli's rifle, strapped across her back, its weight familiar, steady. A storm brewed on the horizon, dark as memory. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. She looked to the west, where the sky still burned gold over the hills, and whispered his name once more. Then she nudged the horse forward. The first drops hit the brim of her hat like slow applause. The wind rose, and the plains came alive again, thunder rolling, grass bending, the sound of hooves fading into forever. Years later, travelers stopping through Wyoming territory still talk about her. They sit by the fire and ask if the story's true, if the girl sold at 17 ever found peace. And the storytellers, old and knowing, only smile. They said she was innocent once. One might begin, voice low, smoke curling up into the dark. But the West don't keep innocence. It just turns it into legend. He leans closer to the flame, eyes reflecting its light. And that, boys, is how the widow's gun wrote her own ending, the one no one expected. The wind stirs the coals. Somewhere far away, a horse's hoof strikes stone. The sound echoes once, then fades, carried off into the wide, eternal silence of the frontier.